Hey guys, Tyler here with Foul Language's first video project. I'm about to interview Matthew Crenson. He's a political science professor emeritus at Johns Hopkins University. Really nice guy, and in the interest of full disclosure, he is also my uncle. So enjoy. He has some really interesting views on the way the American political system is these days. So roll that beautiful bean footage. So Matthew, tell us a little about yourself and what you do.
I'm a professor emeritus of political science at Johns Hopkins University. My specialty has been urban politics and a relatively new field, 25 years old maybe, called American political development.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the media lately, or at least during the last election cycle, a lot of the media and a lot of the rhetoric we were seeing was dominated by fear and code words. How did that start happening, and what kind of effect do you think it has on the debate?
Actually, this is a very old phenomenon. There was a brief period in American history, probably less than 50 years, when we had what are called the mainstream media, who tried to reach out to the entire population and therefore couldn't take highly partisan positions on anything. But their history of the mainstream media is brief. Up until the end of the 19th century, in fact, newspapers, which are the main media institutions, were highly partisan and extremely biased. And the kinds of attacks that we see today would be nothing compared to what they were in the 19th century. Because in the 19th century, most newspapers were branches of political parties. And there was no pretense of impartiality or moderation. And the kinds of attacks that politicians launched against one another, sometimes through third parties, were extremely violent and sort of spiteful. So really what we're seeing now is a return to what the media were like about 100 years ago or a little bit more. Mm-hmm. In fact, a graduate student of mine did his thesis on this and pointed out that with the development of the internet and cable TV, it's possible now for niche media to appeal to niche audiences. So the idea, the networks, for example, TV networks that reach out to the whole country, they're now being overtaken by cable TV, by Fox, Rush Limbaugh, other kinds of commentators who really just appeal to a very narrow segment of the public. The idea of appealing to the entire public is gradually dying now. Mm-hmm. And not so gradual, it's happening pretty fast.
What do you think of, you talked about the commentators, what do you think, are you bothered by the effect that some people like Glenn Beck have of starting protests and pretending they'd had nothing to do with them? Does it bother you, or the fact that they're riling people up like that?
I don't like them. I don't agree with them. Mm-hmm. But I have serious questions about their influence. A number of people pointed out that they don't seem to have shifted the balance of opinion in the country very much at all. They don't seem to have much impact. In fact, the New York Times, David Brooks, is that his name? Oh, yeah. Had a column about that just a little while ago. What I really do feel somewhat alarmed about is the fact that presumably responsible conservative politicians, mostly in the Republican Party, have not had the guts to repudiate these guys. If they really don't change that many votes, why are these guys so reluctant to call them out? And I'm really been disappointed, especially with some people like Charles Grassley, a senator from Iowa, who I regarded as a relatively responsible politician, who sort of gave in to the death panel rhetoric and implied at least that there was some justification for it. I find that simply irresponsible.
How did the death panel idea take hold? It seems to be one of those lies that, if repeated enough, becomes a truth.
Yeah, that's exactly how. I mean, one thing you have to recognize right now is that the major political issues that are preoccupying the country are probably taken together more complex than any we faced in the recent past, or maybe in living memory. Healthcare is extremely complicated. You have to be a real expert to know what the implications of different plans are going to be. Energy and the environment and global warming is another extremely complex issue. The regulation of our financial institutions, another extremely complex issue. When the country faces complex issues like that are difficult to understand, people get scared. And so they're vulnerable to the sort of highly simplified explanations of people like Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh. Which makes you wonder whether the evidence about the fact that these people don't seem to have any impact is really accurate. People get really, they don't understand healthcare. They don't understand how to regulate non-bank financial institutions. It doesn't make sense to them. When you have uncertainty, what you get is fear.
Mm-hmm. And the person at the forefront of specifically death panels, even after it was debunked, was Sarah Palin, who had kind of a meteoric rise to power, but while saying stuff that really didn't make much logical sense.
Well, maybe it didn't make sense, but it seemed to resonate with a large segment of the public. There are a lot of people out there who like her, who like the fact that she articulates the sort of small-town values that they embrace. In fact, that's where she has her greatest impact, in outside of the big cities, in the small towns in the Midwest and in the far West.
Mm-hmm. And she managed to quit without actually quitting.
Yeah. Her as a political tactician, she's not very good. But she gets by on the larger issues.
Mm-hmm. What do you hope changes in just this whole confrontational style of American politics?
I don't know whether we can change it. I think it's built into the system. I hope that people begin to recognize that the American political system is not indestructible. That the mutual tolerance, civility, rationality are fragile commodities, and that sort of unrestrained political invective can destroy them. After all, we've had a civil war in this country. I'm not saying we're going to have another one, but the character, the quality of political debate can have serious and deeply painful consequences for the entire country. We've seen it before. We need to be careful.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay.
Great.
Well, there is some.
Mm-hmm.
We have to remember that we had a civil war.
Mm-hmm.
Although there are no issues like slavery around today, there are people in this country who have adopted such extreme positions that undermine the very legitimacy of our government, that while I don't think they're going to mobilize and take up arms, they do threaten democratic political liberation.